You got your import and export of all the photos and where you'd like to export them to. And then you also have your galleries and folders that you can arrange how you want them. I'll be honest with you, I'm real bad at like organizing real well, but I like to use the collections. So this is actually one of my collection of birds in flight. On your right side here, you have all your quick developments and a couple tools. And it's, for some reason, it's smaller on this, and it's fuzzy up there. But if there's any questions as far as how you get started, just to open up a picture and get ready, get your development. That's where I start. And then you got all your sliders, and the slider is just like your right side is just like Adobe Raw, right? Adobe Raw. It's almost identical. I do have Photoshop, but I'm not real proficient in it. I don't study it enough. But I do know the raw, and it looks exactly like this. You got your exposure sliders, you got your contrast, all them good things. If you scroll down, you know, you got your saturation, hue, and all that. You can change the tone of your picture. And then sharpening and noise reduction. There was some real good ones that I don't know if they're good as Photoshop. You know, some people say that the noise reduction programs are better in some. Lightroom is, I think,
Adobe
okay.
Camera Raw, Adobe Camera Raw and Lightroom have the exact same engine.
Okay.
So they should operate
They
exactly
should,
the same
you
way.
know, operate the same. Yeah, and I have, like I said, I can go right to photo. Yeah, see, I hardly do. I hardly go there, so I develop right.
You trying to send it to Photoshop?
Yeah, send it to Photoshop.
Oh, you right click down there and say edit in, and it puts it to Photoshop.
Just right
Yeah,
click on the photo.
Under
Right
photo.
click on the photo.
See, I've got Mac, so you can't
You
right.
right click on the photo down
You
there.
can't right click.
Can't
Right
click.
click
No,
on
you
it.
can't right click on it.
Yeah, you
Right
can.
click.
Try your tools.
You right.
Control. Control.
I don't like maps. You can't right click. You can't left click, right click.
No,
Right click on
Yeah.
anyway, I do have a
I right
Oh,
click
there
on
it
my
is.
Mac.
There it is,
Isn't that
right
why
there.
I'm on the house?
It's edit in, and then I can go right to Photoshop 2020. So if you have the feature, do you buy the program, or as you guys do the prescription? Or Sorry.
$9.99.
Yeah, $9.99 a month. That's nice. I wish I'd used half of it. But if there's any questions, I mean, as far as how Lightroom works, you know, I'll be more than happy. I like using, you know, these tools over here, real easy to use. Spot removal, where you can just click on something and get rid of, you know, that one actually mirrored. But you can get rid of little objects. It's not good if you have to get rid of something large. Like in Photoshop, you can get rid of a lot of unwanted things.
If you click on that visualize spots at the bottom,
What's that?
the visualize spots at the bottom.
Lower left.
No.
Lower left of the large frame you have. Says visualize
No,
now.
go to the right.
Go to the right now.
Oh, yeah, right there.
Right there,
Yeah,
visualize
click on
spots.
that,
There you go.
Yeah,
and that's gonna show you all your spots. Well,
okay. Yeah, this almost looks like I don't use this as much, but it almost looks like your sharpening tool. Whatever's gonna be sharpening your mask.
Well, you can move your slider back and forth in the middle, you know.
It'll show you what's gonna be sharp.
Well, it'll show you the spots that are
Dust spots.
your
Okay.
center spots, or otherwise other spots.
Yeah, some of the features I'll be honest with you, I don't use, I know of them, but if you don't use them all the time, you kind of lose them. But some of the things to be careful with is too much contrast and too much vibrance. I was always taught that when you do adjustments, especially in the if you're going to do saturation, don't go overboard. It's real moderate changes.
I just drag all my sliders to the right, all the way over. And then save it, pull it back up, and drag them all the way over again.
See what that looks like.
I'm telling you, you'll make a preset out of it once you try it.
We'll call it the Neil special.
And
All sliders to the right.
that's funny. One of the other things I like with Lightroom, and I do it for most of my portrait photography, is I do presets. And some people say that's a lazy photographer way, but it kind of gets me out of like sitting for hours where, I'm editing 1,000 pictures for a wedding. I can do like the presets where, they have different styles of presets where you're going to give more of a different look to your picture. The only thing when you use presets, you're not done. You should always go over and adjust how you want to do them. But I use Totally Rad. Is good for portrait photography, I think. And then Braxton is good for wedding photography.
Are these bundled with Lightroom or are the add-ons?
They're add-ons, and they cost, everything costs. So like, for instance, Lux Portrait. Oh, that one's called Cool Bliss. Nice. Some of them I don't use, they're totally ridiculous, but they are a good way to hurry up and, when I'm editing a shoot that I know I'm going to spend hours on. I'll use one preset for like a certain area of the wedding.
Seems like everybody makes presets for Lightroom, but I have found very few presets for Adobe Camera Raw. Is there a reason for that?
I'm not sure.
Because I would love to have presets, but I don't use Lightroom. I use Adobe Camera Raw. So
Yeah, and I know.
I make my own, but
Yeah,
to
Photoshop
buy some of
has
these ones that are kind of fun and funky.
Yeah, some of these, especially the tools that they come with, the presets come with tools, they will only work in Photoshop. So I don't use them because I'm like, okay, I haven't learned Photoshop enough to edit a senior photo shoot or something. But I do like presets, and like I said, some photographers that I read on blogs and that, it's a lazy way. Because you can build your own presets, like you said,
What's the difference between Lightroom and Lightroom CC? Because I think I got the CC and it's nothing like that.
It's just the latest version.
No,
What's the
CC
cloud-based?
is Creative Cloud.
Creative Cloud. Okay, it's the choice to go into the cloud.
Lightroom Classic.
Okay.
No, Lightroom Classic is for your desktop, and Lightroom is more for mobile and your iPad, your phone. Yeah.
Yeah, I thought it was, I knew it was the cloud, but I thought it was the latest version too.
Yeah, well, the Classic, I don't do anything on the cloud. The Classic is just my desktop.
It sounds like personal preference.
Yeah.
It just seems like the CC has a lot less options on it. No, because mine looks nothing like that. It doesn't have all of that
It's
stuff.
similar
should.
functionality.
It should, I have CC, it looks exactly
Mine
like that.
does. It should look very
Yeah, and I
similar.
don't know, Kelly, if you have that, I don't know if you're gonna be able, do you prescribe or have you downloaded that program?
I purchased it.
You purchased it.
Yeah. It's
The
like
only thing
$90.
too is you might not be able to do updates if you purchased it.
It does update,
Does it?
yes.
Okay.
Well, if it's web-based.
Yeah.
Just update them.
Yeah, because I was always,
So when I get my monthly updates, I get both. And I use the desktop version, I don't use the cloud version.
yeah,
So I think you have the choice of using either or. So I use the desktop. Even though my photos go to the cloud, I use a different program for that.
I kind of hate the cloud.
The cloud version seems slower to me. But
No,
maybe that might be my connection.
I just hate the cloud altogether, even if it ain't photography. That's just me.
So I have a question about Lightroom in that it seems like a lot of people use Lightroom for organization. Everybody always says Lightroom is the best way to organize all your photos. You use it for organization? application?
I've used it for years now, and I'll get requests for a photo that I've taken 10 years ago, and like I have no idea where it is in my catalog. I'll just go to the search feature and put in a couple keywords, and that photo will generally appear.
But you have to keyword it in the beginning, right?
Yeah, you do have to do some keywording.
Yeah.
But when I first started, I was a Photoshop guy, and then I went to Lightroom thinking I'll just use it for organization. But now I do about 90% of my editing in Lightroom. I still bring it into Photoshop because to my eye, I can make a little more of a difference. But I think more and more people are probably just editing in Lightroom today. You're not going into Photoshop. But old people like me that grew up with Photoshop.
And me.
It depends if you like the
I
client
can't,
enough
I
to edit.
That you want to work that hard.
Otherwise, you just put a preset on it.
Yeah.
Yeah, for
It's
me,
all about making your workflow easy, and Lightroom does that.
yeah,
But
for me,
Keyword
that's
everything
what it's
in the
about.
beginning, right?
So,
that's a lot of
When
work.
I do a shoot, I'll import my photos in, and I'll just put 2 or 3 keywords in. That's all I'll do. I won't put all my keywords in. So say, like this morning, I went and shot the strip. I'll import those photos into Lightroom this afternoon. I'll highlight all the photos, and I'll just put 2 or 3 small keywords in, Nevada strip, whatever. And then later on, when I work on the image, I'll add to those keywords. But it's a great way, you'll never lose an image if you just.
Oh, now that sounds like a challenge.
If you're disciplined.
As long as you move it within Lightroom and don't move it outside.
Yeah, don't move
Well,
it
that's what
outside.
I was gonna say, what if you go and
Well,
back it up
if
to
you-
some other storage, then you've lost that link, right?
No, you never lose a link, as long as you keep in your external hard drive, and that's what I do. I keep a gallery of, say, a shoot that I did, as long as I keep it in that gallery in my external, when I go back onto Lightroom, my edits are all still there. You never lose the edits.
But it eats up this space because you're saving it, if you keep it.
It's non-destructive editing though, so
So
you're not
you're
really.
keeping it there, plus you're keeping it, if you're saving your raw files.
Well, all my files on the external hard drive, they're so huge. I got these little external hard drives, I just have to, I can't keep them on here, obviously, because the 850, 810, they take up so much space. If I get, I'm right about, I did a couple shooting.
Here's your solution.
I get like 4,000, like right now I have like 3,800 pictures in there because I went out shooting this week, and I haven't played with Lightroom. I start to fill up his computer and I have a good space on this Mac. That's how big the files are. So I get rid of them into my external right away. So then I do like him, I use a keyboard.
I use external.
I'm not sold.
So.
You're not doing a good job of selling me on Lightroom.
Huh? Okay, I'm done.
I'm just teasing. What do you use, Kippy?
Well, Don, if you don't use
There was a-
Photoshop, how do you watermark your photos?
I have,
Can
Yeah,
you
we
repeat the
export.
question, because people in the back, I'm sure, didn't hear
See,
that.
here's
I
that.
asked if he doesn't use Photoshop, how does he watermark his photos?
So here it is right here. When you're exporting your files,
Yeah.
you could add your own watermark, or you could, here's my watermark right here. I gotta click it. And so right now this is I call it black one because it's black. But I got different ones I put in there, and I did them myself. You could actually create a watermark.
Okay, I'm sorry, then where do you export it to?
And when you export them, you can export them to anywhere. Right here is your right now it's to desktop. See, so if I had an external hard drive connected to my computer, I'd see an option right here. Right now it's a desktop. I'd say Pacific folder, and then my external would pop up right here. Right now it's under desktop, and then I could put it in a subfolder and name it like actually senior photo shoot or something like that. And then I could do the custom settings that I want for that, the size that I want for the file. But watermarking comes right here. You can do
That's true, that's right, and I don't know why I always export to Photoshop, and I don't know why, because that's the only way I know how to send it to somebody or to post it.
No, you could do it right here, Laura. You can do all the same thing in Photoshop. It's actually easier, I think. I think it's easier than Photoshop.
There's another question in the back as well.
No, I still had a question, I just want to kind of
Actually, myself, I am kind of allergic to Photoshop. I mean, most of the things that I do, I use Lightroom. And it is like for, I was telling them, if you shoot raw,
Yeah.
actually it's best to do everything, most of the photography work on Lightroom. And the last thing to move to Photoshop, because I have read about the quality of the file, even would be a little less. It will take, once you move to Photoshop, it will take from that raw file information.
Okay.
And I think that might be, you're correct, but I think that might be also the more adjustments you make, the less quality the picture is. Did you guys know
Local
that?
adjustments in Lightroom, local adjustments in Photoshop.
If you export it as a smart object, it remains the same. You can bring it
Yeah.
back into Lightroom or Adobe Camera Raw without any change at all, and you get all the editing features if you save it as a smart object.
Yeah, and I saved mine as a smart development.
The amazing thing about Lightroom is that it's
You
completely
say that it's
non-destructive.
what?
It doesn't really change the raw file at all.
No,
As
it
a matter of fact,
keeps it.
it doesn't assign a color profile or a format until you export it. So it's just you make changes in the way that it appears on the monitor, but that picture doesn't really exist as an image until you export it.
All those settings are just stored in the text file.
Right.
Yeah.
In an
Exactly. It's a sidecar that you never see.
Yeah.
It's in the catalog, but you never see it.
So we're at about 15 minutes for this particular segment. If we can just move on and just get through the first 4 intros, and then we can just open it up to more general, is that okay? We move on?
This is how to fix the 2 most common problems I see in images that are submitted to Nevada Magazine. And I hope it's helpful, and I hope even more that some of it will translate over to Lightroom. That those of you who know how to do this stuff in Lightroom, I'm hoping the process will translate over.
So today we'll be working on a photo taken by Meg Mueller, our managing editor. The photo may be familiar as we ran a similar one on our November-December 2019 cover. I'm going to walk you through my raw process for this, but it is my process, so don't think that it's going to look like anybody else's. First, I usually start with the white balance, and I tend to run my photos pretty warm, so I'll usually bump them as much as I can. You can play around with this. You can try other white balances to get other effects, even if they're not the right white balance for the photo that you're working on. You never know what you might get when you play around. But we're going to end up bringing it back to my nice warm shade. And then next I move on usually to the exposure. And this and the other sliders are something that I adjust on the fly. And I don't just adjust one, move on, adjust the next, move on, and never look back. I'm always going back and fixing things. So please feel free to play when you do this. Also, when I work these sliders, I'm not always sure what I want out of it. So I'll run them to the extremes and then bring them back to where I want it to be. And in this particular processing, I'm looking for something more like a silhouette. So I'm removing a lot of the white and the hot spots. Then I'll move on to clarity. I know some people who will march that clarity up to 100%, but I think it looks fake, so I generally don't do that. Next for me is usually vibrance and saturation, and I have to be a little careful because I tend to be heavy-handed sometimes with these. The next part is something that I think is really important, and I don't know if a lot of people know about it. And what it is a thing called chromatic aberration. If you see in your photos that are very contrasty, sometimes a blue or a purple or a red line along the contrasted edge, that's chromatic aberration. I'm not going to give you the technical definition here. You can look it up. But look at the post over on the right in this particular image. See when I click on the chromatic aberration control, how it removes that? Please, please, please look for this in your images because I see a lot of chromatic aberration in a lot of the submissions that I get. You can do a profile correction to adjust for the curve of your lens and also to remove some of the vignetting. And it's not an all or nothing. You can turn it on and then go down below to where the distortion and vignetting are and make some customized adjustments there if you'd like, if you want more, less. This particular image, I actually like it the way it is. So you can see the differences that it makes as I swing these to the left and the right. But I'm just going to keep this one the same. So then we'll pop down here and click on Open Image. And you see something similar to what we had on our November-December cover. So next what I'm going to do is talk about a different process and a different way of achieving the look that you might want. Say you wanted more of the foreground details in this shot and you didn't want it to be so much of a silhouette. So I'm actually going to process the image twice, and I'm going to go through these kind of fast as opposed to how I did it last time. I'm just flying through this really quickly. So what I'm going to do with this image is I'm processing for the foreground. So I'm processing for the shadowed areas. I want to get as much detail out of them as possible. Again, I'm removing that chromatic aberration. And this time I'm actually going to go ahead and do the profile correction because I like the way that it looks. One thing you'll want to be sure of when you're trying to put two images together is if you do the profile corrections on one, make sure you do the profile corrections on the other. Otherwise, they're not going to match up. So I have this image that I opened with the lighter, and now I'm going to process it for the sky. So I processed it for the background and had all my details. Now I'm processing solely for what I want the sky to look like. Then I'm going to open that up in Photoshop and I'm going to dump it into another layer, and then we'll work on layer masks. So here we are in Photoshop. I'm copying over my dark layer, which is processed for the sky, and I'm pasting it into a new layer above my first image. I'm going to add a layer mask to it. And then I'm going to go over here and I'm going to select the sky on the lighter image. I'm just using the magic wand here, and I'm just using it fast and furious and not being careful. If I were doing this for real, you know, I might pop over into the trees and try and get rid of some of that white. Any of you who have ever tried to do this know that it's almost impossible to get every single patch of that sky selected in order to mask it out of the layer above. But this is all part of what I want to show you, because this is what I see a lot of with images that are sent to me here at the magazine. So I'm cleaning up my selection there. Now I'm going to go back to my darker layer, and I will select the inverse because what I want to do is mask out all the rest of it and keep the sky. And now I'm going to hide these dotted lines so you can see what it looks like. See how crappy it looks on the right? It's obviously poorly selected, and you can see all the original sky showing through. So I get images like this. It's just not good. It's never going to make it into the magazine. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to duplicate this layer. I'm going to keep the old one there, just hide it so that we can refer to it later. I'm going to delete all of the mask information, and I'm going to start over and try again. So here I go back to my original mask. I select it. I will select the opposite again. And then I'm going to do something that I see a ton of people do, and I don't know if they do it this way, but they're doing things like this. So you're going to change the selection, and I'm going to expand it so that it's not so tight to the trees. Now I'm exaggerating this process, and then I give it a little bit of a feather, and then I'm going to do a layer mask. So again, I'm exaggerating this, but I see this on a ton of photos. Let me hide these dotted lines again. And you see what I'm talking about? I get these ghosted images all the time where somebody wants a really cool sky, but they don't know how to get it and separate it from the tree. So I'm going to show you, again, by duplicating that layer, removing the mask, and starting over, how I would go about doing this. So I would use the gradient tool. And I always do this wrong at least once. It's like a USB. You plug it in once, you have a 50-50 chance of getting it right. Oh, nope, that's wrong. So then I go back the other direction. So this is what I'm saying is you got to play around with this kind of stuff. Now this is closer to what I want. I can still see some lighter patches of the sky around the tree. So I'm going to go ahead and do a little bit of custom, not dodging and burning, which you might be familiar with, but removing and subtracting on that layer mask. So right now what I want to do is, let's see, I have to even think about it myself. Am I adding to the layer mask or am I removing from the layer mask? What I'm doing is removing from the layer mask because I don't want to mask out this sky layer. I'm removing some of that mask so it's showing more of the sky layer up around the tree. Do you see where I'm pointing at? So I'm using a very soft brush, 20% opacity, just to kind of blend it a little bit more. So I want to click on this and show you. That's what we were dealing with before. That's what we did the first time. This is what we did the second time. And now here's where we're at. Looking pretty good on the tree, right? I mean, you could mess around with it a little bit longer, but it looks pretty good. So then we want to get some of that foreground in there. So I'm going to go ahead and again, copy this layer mask. And I always keep my old layer masks in case I need to go back. Now, when I drag this layer mask to the trash, it gives me a chance to apply it. And then I'm going to create a new layer mask on there. But see, this is what it looks like. This is what the mask looks like without anything behind it. So I'm putting this next layer mask on there, and I'm going to do my same gradient trick down at the bottom. How cool is that? I mean, you don't even have to make any selections, anything. And again, you can go back and do your fine tuning now. You can add to that layer mask, select or delete from the layer mask, do whatever you want to make it look good. But the thing that you need to remember is you're looking at this photo and you took it, but nobody else has seen this photo before you show them. You are in control of the art behind this photo. So you make it do whatever you want it to do. Okay, so this last part I'm going to show you is bringing out the person. So we want to see Eric a little bit clearer here. We don't want him silhouetted. You could just go in with a big brush and try to brush over it, but look what's happening on that layer mask. You're also getting some of that bleed through. So what I would do is I would go back again to my original image where it's nice and separated between light and dark. And I would go ahead and select around Eric. Make sure you get all the little nooks and crannies. Again, I'm going really fast here, so it's not going to be as perfect as it would be if I was doing this for real. I just want to give you an idea of the things you can do. So I select a large portion around Eric so I can be sloppy if I want to. And then I'm going to go ahead again and select the inverse because I want to select Eric. I'm going to go back to my layer mask. And I'm going to paint inside of Eric to reveal more of him in the photo. Cool, right? Okay, so one more time. Here was our first try, not very good. And here was our second try with the ghosting that I just can't stand. Here was our third step with the tree brought forward, and then our last step with everything. And now looking back at our original, here's more of our silhouetted image versus the image that has the foreground brought out. So it all depends on what you want, but those are a couple of different ways to achieve it.
Kippy, have you tried that new select subject or select background?
I lost my glasses, I'm blind. Alex actually showed me that just recently, and I haven't done it much because I'm a creature of habit, and I just keep defaulting back to the old-fashioned ways. I mean, I've been using Photoshop since 2.0 back in like '93 or something like that. So it's, I'm just so used to doing it the hard way that I don't pay attention. Thank you. Thank you. No. See, there's like 800 different ways to get to what you want to do. So that was just my way, and by no means does anybody have to try and recreate it or anything, but I just wanted to give you some options for trying to get what you're looking for. Yeah. So, Neil or Steve, who wants to go next? Come on up.
That's it. Hi guys, I'm gonna play a little video here, and I know this is kind of cart before the horse kind of thing, But my presentation is going to be about light painting, and one of the ways I'm going to show you is to do multiple shots and then stack them together in Photoshop. And so I kind of wanted to just show you how that stacking process works and how easy it is. So I'm just going to pull up a quick 6-minute video, and we'll take a look at that. So obviously these videos are all online. You can certainly watch them again. But this is kind of the second part of a video where I light painted this old cabin. And then I did it in several images. And this is the part where we put it together. So when I go through my presentation, I'll explain either doing light painting in a single shot or with stacked images. And this is how you would put stacked images together in Photoshop. Hey guys, Lockhart, Lockhart Photography. Just wanted to make a follow-up video to the light painting video that I posted a couple weeks ago. Had a couple people request this, and it's so super simple. You're just going to be amazed at how easy it is to composite these kind of shots in Photoshop. So here we are in Adobe Bridge, and I've got my 6 shots that I took. If we take a look at these, you can see just the different portions of the building that each exposure lit. So here we have the one side, we've got the door frame, from the window, some interior light, a little bit stronger window light, and then the front. And the other thing that I'm going to mention is when you do this kind of stacking in Photoshop, you absolutely want to make sure that you're on a tripod. If I cycle through these real quick, you can see that my building is rock solid. It's not bumping around or moving up and down. Because if there was any kind of shift in your camera while you were taking these, if you moved the tripod or somehow it got bumped or something like that, the shots aren't going to line up and you're going to get some really strange like ghosting artifacts. So definitely use a tripod. I was really lucky that this night there was no wind, so even the trees aren't even moving. So that was really lucky. So here we go. Let's do this. So what we want to do is we want to take all these files and we want to put them on separate layers in Photoshop. And Bridge, and I believe Lightroom will do the same thing. If I just grab all these, I can go up to Tools, Photoshop, load files into Photoshop layers, and it'll launch Photoshop, and then it'll put each one of those separate pictures on a separate layer. So if we just give this a second here, it's going to load all 6 of them. And then the next thing that I like to do, just so that when I'm working I can kind of just know where I'm at, is I just like to name these guys. So I'm going to turn on our first layer, and I'm just going to call this front, because that's pretty much lighting on the front of the building. This one I'm going to call window main, because that's the bigger of the 2 window lights. We'll call this inside. And this next layer, kind of just a smaller window light, I'll call it small window. This layer is the door frame. And our final layer is kind of that window on the far side, so I'm just going to call this window far. Doesn't really matter what you call them, just as long as you know what the heck they are. So this is where the magic happens. This is so easy and so cool, you're going to love it. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to turn all these layers back off. I'm going to turn on my first layer, and then I'm going to turn on the layer above it, which is the window main. So what happens when I do that is this layer, the window main, blocks out all the light and everything. We're not seeing anything that's below. We're not seeing the front layer at all. But if I come up to window main and I change my blending mode from normal to lighten, then all of a sudden what we're seeing is anything that's lighter on this layer is going to be added to the layer below it. So as I turn this on and off, you can see that all it's changing is just the light from that window. And if we zoom in here and look at this at 100%, you can see that it's perfect. It's not creating any weird masking, any kind of fringing, anything that would give it away as a composite. It looks completely natural. And we didn't have to do anything except change the blending mode. So yeah, that's pretty cool. So let's go back, let's do it for the rest of these layers. So if I turn on my inside, again, we're only going to see the inside because it's still set to normal. But if I come up here and change it to lighten, then that interior light is just going to be added to the rest of it. Now you'll notice the sky is changing a little bit, and that's just because the clouds were moving through. And if there was a lighter section of cloud, then it's gonna kind of add that in, but it doesn't really make any difference. It doesn't look unnatural or anything. You can just kind of see up here, it's just changing the sky a little bit. If there were stars, it might be more of a problem because you would have, like dots where the stars were moving through. And if that were the case, I would just mask those out. But for the purpose of this demonstration, we don't have to worry about that because it was cloudy. And let's continue. So, small light, the small window light, I'm going to turn that on. And then I'm just going to change that to light and blend mode. And you can see that that's just adding a little bit of extra dimension to that window light. Let's bring in the door frame. I'm going to change it from normal to lighten. And there we go. Now we have our door frame lit a little better. And this far area over here, this other window, let's just turn that guy on. We'll change the blend mode to lighten. And there you have it. Got a little more detail in that window now. Another thing that's really cool about this technique is you have the complete control of the level of the light in each one of these layers. So let's say this front light was a little too much, just, you wanted it a little darker and you accidentally got it that bright. You can go to the front of the building, this layer here that's this front light, and you can simply just bring down your opacity and watch how that changes just the front of the building. You still have everything else, but now you can just kind of bring it up wherever you want, wherever you think looks good. Let's bring that all the way back up. Maybe you wanted the interior light a little darker. I can take that, click on the inside layer, go up to opacity, and I can just bring that down to taste, wherever you think it feels good. So that's pretty much it, guys. I just wanted to kind of show you how I put that shot together. I really appreciate all the support, and if you haven't subscribed to the channel, please subscribe. Leave me a like. And
was that helpful at all, guys?
Yes.
Absolutely. Yay. All right.
And easy looking.
When you shot the cabin, what were your settings for each shot? Or were they the same for each one?
Yeah, it was probably the same for each one. If I had to guess, I would say, I don't know, f8, 30 seconds, and ISO 400. I mean, I don't know for sure, but I mean,
that's a good starting point.
Yeah, it's a good starting point. It's just, yeah, I dialed in, what I wanted to do on this was, and I'll talk about this in my presentation too, is, sorry, can't obviously talk and click at the same time, is I wanted to preserve a little bit of the ambient light, the moonlight, to get that kind of blue in there as well. So I didn't want to do my exposure so dark that it was, all I was seeing was my flashlight. So once I figured out where I wanted it, overall, and then you figure out how long you can paint before you blow anything out in your shot, then I just lock that down and just do all the different, I'm going to light this and light that, and yeah, so it's just, you got to figure it out at least once, and then you're pretty much good to go.
Need my glasses?
Yeah. I can't see. Is that in focus? I was just trying to close it. Isn't this F4? Is that F4? There we go.
I'm so glad I could come help you.
Thank you. Anyway, I don't want to take any more time from right now because I know Steve is up. But we can talk more about that when I do my thing.
I know you guys are saying, and again, Kippy, where is the sand?
I have a folder on the desk.
Oh, there it is. I see.
I just drug it into the trash.
I see it says Steve. So, Lightroom. Well, I might start using some of Photoshop.
See, you almost converted something.
It does some things.
So, besides my wife and the smell of new rain, I probably like time lapse almost as much as those guys. So a time lapse, it's photographic technique of taking, well, I won't read that to you, guys can read, okay? I like time lapse. So let's see. I really, really, really like time lapse photography. Okay, am I good at it? Maybe not, but I sure heck have fun. Okay, so I like to focus on dark skies. There's just something about the Milky Way moving across the night sky, even though I'm usually asleep while it's doing it, but nonetheless. Here's Gold Butte. We were talking about airplanes in Gold Butte. They're slowing down a little bit because it's getting past 2 in the morning.
What's the light source on the sign?
The light source, believe it or not, is my black light that I use to find scorpions.
Oh, nice.
So for some reason that fit, and it lasted. I was surprised the batteries lasted. So, and there is time to be a little silly. And she's got to put up with this stuff all the time. I just finished 100-hour of a plant of a flower blooming, and it turned out crappy. So, but this is 2 years ago taking the Christmas tree down. R2D2 was helping me.
That's awesome.
Okay, so that's stupid, but it's fun. You know? And she's just going, God, what's up with this guy? Now that I'm married, I've been married, I do have a little time on my hands. And then I swear I'll get to light room. This was the day I was supposed to hit 120. So we had this great idea. We get it, you can see the winds blowing a little bit. Unlike it didn't move your walls of your.
Right.
Now here's how I created, and no training at all. If anybody else has any other ideas, I'd like to know what you do. Like you were saying, open Lightroom, import your raw files, okay? And then you select the files you want, and then you edit it. All right, and we won't talk about editing, okay? But you edit it from one end to the other, okay? So now I'm ready for a slideshow. So what I do, I make a slideshow in Lightroom. Okay, so you select slideshow, okay, and I uncheck all the options. There's a lot of options there, and check them all. Especially out of the box, the slide length comes to 4 seconds, and a crossfade 2.5. So I don't want any. I want it to be fast. Unfortunately for Lightroom, it only goes to 1 second. That's the fastest you can go. You also select quality, which it says standard, but you can go. There's something better than standard. Okay. Okay. I changed to 1 second. You guys okay with this? I'm not. Sometimes I tend to run off and keep talking. Then you select create save slideshow. Okay, and that'll be slideshow. Of course, the next time you do will be slideshow 1, slideshow 2, or name it whatever you want. Okay, then you select the photos, and you can look down there. I've selected 642 photos. And then you export video, and you name it, and then you wait. Okay, and when I do a nighttime time lapse of 1,000 and some, I do it and then go to bed. So I sleep a lot. I sleep when I take a time lapse.
Being retired is awesome.
It is, it's tough. So you wait, and it'll output an MP4 file. Okay, so you get the MP4, and like I say, it's 1 second. So if you go back and play it, it's not going to be a time lapse. It's going to be, a slow go morning. So I use, just because it's available, Microsoft Movie Maker. And I don't know, Adobe Premiere, I don't know if you use Adobe Premiere or not. Our youngest son does. That's probably more robust, but again, I'm just doing this for fun.
Is Movie Maker still available? I thought they discontinued it.
Well,
I have an old version on an old laptop, but I haven't been able to find it to put on my new laptop.
really, it's like a Windows 10, and I think it came with it, or maybe I had it downloaded from somewhere.
Look for it again.
So I imported there, and then I'll change the speed. Okay, and you can go all the way up, I think, to 64. So like this here, I'll change it to 32 times the speed. You can add titles, captions, and credits. This is really easy to work with. And then you can drag and drop music if you want, and that's pretty easy, just drag and drop it in. And you can music tools, you can set when you want it, when you want to stop, when you want to start, when you want to stop. Then you can add volume, and then you save the project, and you save the movie, and that's how I do it. Does anybody else do time lapse? I'm sure you do it some other smarter way.
Not really. I mean, I basically do what you're doing with Lightroom, except I'm using Camera Raw. So I'll adjust one image, and then what I'll do is just copy that developed setting to all the images so they're all the same. Then I just export each image out as a JPEG or a TIFF or whatever, and then I just import those into Premiere or After Effects or any of the other one, and then I can generate the final file out of there. The only thing that I would say that the way you're going about it is you're dropping quality because you've created an MP4 and you're putting it into Video Maker and then you're exporting it out again, so you're losing a generation there. But I mean, if your process works, it works.
Yeah, and I used to do JPEGs too, but when I tried to import them over to drag and drop them into Windows Movie Maker, it would always there would always be a couple of the beginning files at the end. So I just started doing slideshow.
Yeah, if I'm doing them for like stock, I'll actually export them as 16-bit TIFFs and then run them out of After Effects as 16-bit and save them as a QuickTime ProRes, which is like the most ridiculous big giant file you've ever seen, but the quality is just, like you won't lose anything in your gradients where sometimes you'll see banding. It's just, but that's way overkill for anything other than a sticky stock agency.
So I do these for fun. I also do them for, I say work, but my volunteer work. Here is one that I did for us cleaning some graffiti up in Goldview. This was just 1 hour and 24 minutes. You can see some clowns that come in and graffitied up this place pretty good. So Jimmy at the BLM said, hey, it would be pretty good if we could document this. I said, well, I can probably even do one step better. And that's what it was.
So rude.
Yeah, and that's it. And that's after. Okay, one more thing, one more fun one. Has anybody been to Snow Canyon State Park in Utah? And you've climbed up where the low-key marbles are?
Yep.
And so I climbed up there one day with this great idea, except it was a little windy, although the low-key marbles were. So I played with the low-key marbles for a couple hours, and it was painstakingly slow. Here's my low-key marbles. And I will tell you, no low-key marbles were harmed in this video, and I didn't take any. So, but I had a semi-good time, except it was just so damn windy. And that's it.
So I guess if you three guys could go up on the stage, and then if anybody has any questions.
What if they have a question for you?
I
can bring it in the chair.
No,
You can sit here and I'll stand, because I'm always happy to stand.
So I guess I should ask, are there any questions? 'Cause
I just had one for Neil. What was the light source on the cabin images again?
A mag light, little flashlight.
Okay.
I will say it was a incandescent bulb, which are very hard to find these days. Everything's LED, but I much prefer the warm, tungsten light temperature.
Neil?
Yes, sir.
How are you metering the light?
For the light painting?
Yes.
I take a shot and I go, oh, that sucks, I'm too long. And I take another shot, and so it's really just.
That's the way we all do it.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, because with a flashlight, I mean, you're like, how do you even know?
Gotta love digital photography.
Yeah, exactly. I just do it, and if it's too much, then I try and, for a while it was like using a stopwatch and going, okay, paint this for 15 seconds, then I know it's gonna be, but nah, I just do it until it's right.
There you go.
Yes.
Lightroom or Photoshop for as far as soft proofing? Do you guys use that?
What? For multiple editing, you mean?
Soft proofing, when you're getting ready to print an image, and you wanna make sure that the print matches what you see on your screen.
I have no experience with that. I don't print anything. I send them to a lab and let them deal with it.
Yeah, but they should have ICC profiles that you can compare
Like orange.
to make sure that your
Sounds like a Kippy question.
Yeah, and I have used those profiles before in Photoshop. You can load it into Photoshop, so a lot of the better printers will have, they can send you a file that you can load into it.
But the soft proofing, you can actually bring it up on your screen and it'll show you which colors are out of gamut. And you load in your printer and your paper, and then you bring up the soft proofing, and it'll actually show you what's out of gamut. You can go through and make your adjustments so that the magentas are true magenta that's printed out.
Does anybody else here print a lot and able to address that?
I don't print a lot, but it's really easy to do in Lightroom because there's just like a box to click.
Right.
And then it assumes that your monitor is calibrated and those profiles and so, for me at least, there's a lot of experimenting with that.
Right.
Making sure that those, because if you haven't calibrated your monitor, you haven't done it, it's still going to be experimental.
So it sounds
So
like
you
it's not really
prefer
Photoshop versus Lightroom, it's more,
Yeah.
do you have a calibrated monitor and an
Exactly.
ICC profile or
Yeah. I was just curious if you prefer Lightroom over Photoshop.
I like easy, so that
I like easy, so Photoshop works.
you say to mom, I'll say to dad.
You're right.
It's called a whole thing.
Canon.
I just had a question, Steve, have you ever used the built-in time-lapse feature that's in that in your camera?
I use it as, let's see, there's two options. I use interval.
Okay.
Okay, so like dark sky,
Yeah.
I'll do 20 seconds. So every 20 every I'll set it up for every 30 seconds. I'll take a 20-second shot.
And then that creates a separate image that has to be, they have to be compiled.
Yeah, and like I said, I do a slideshow, but I've also done, like Neil was saying, you could export JPEGs.
I just wondered.
Or you're doing TIFFs, right?
Yeah, my experience with at least Canon cameras for in-body time-lapse is it uses, it basically takes the JPEGs and then it turns it into an MP4, like right in the camera and just plays
that's
it
what
back.
you're talking about.
So you're losing all kinds of quality and you're not being able to adjust it. So I think it's much better to just take a sequence of raw images, develop them right to your taste, and then spit those out and then turn them into. I mean, it's certainly easier to do it in camera, and if it's something that doesn't really, it's just going to go on Facebook or whatever, it's probably fine. But I don't
was
think
wondering what
that's.
the output was, I've never tried it.
Yeah, it's just MP4 at
Is
least.
that what it does? I never knew that.
Well, I mean,
No wonder I couldn't get that to work.
Yeah, I know that's what the 90D does and the G7X Mark II does.
Is it,
Okay, he says
has
not.
anybody else tried the in-camera? Because I think the more modern cameras are doing up to 8K, and I don't know what the reality is.
I haven't seen that yet.
I've used mine, but the problem with that is you can't make any adjustments. So I have an Olympus camera, so in the Olympus software, I can put all my images in there, adjust them, and then make a movie right in the Olympus software. So I don't know if it comes out as a JPEG or if it comes out as.
You still have a lot more control though that way. Yeah. Plus, if you're doing sequential files, if you want to do any kind of speed ramping, where it goes slow and then it speeds up, and you got all that kind of ability with files. Whereas if it's just in the camera, that's what you get.
Also, if you're using separate files and you have a plane fly through and you want to get rid of it, you can get rid of it if you're using separate
Right.
files. Pretty easy.
Just send them to Kippy, she'll do it.
I'll do it the old school hard way, but I'll do it.
There's a whole gradient thing.
Can we go back to monitor calibration for a minute? Do you guys have any particular program you use for that? Or
I've never calibrated a monitor in my life.
I do Spider.
I've heard of that. Do you like that one?
Yeah.
I thought about it.
Yeah, you have a little spider you put over your screen, the monitor.
Louder, please.
You calibrate. You use the little spider. I just actually bought a new one.
I just actually bought a new one. You just put it on there and it guides you right through the profile that you want, whether it's Adobe, RGB.
sRGB.
Yeah, and then it'll calibrate it for you. It's real easy.
It'll do it for me. I like that.
And then it also will adjust for the lighting that you're editing in also. So when you got it sitting there, if you go into a darker room, they always say edit in a lighter room, enough light. It'll tell you if you're editing in a too dark of an area. And it will actually adjust your screen for what you're editing to. So.
Do you use any monitor calibration?
I've used Spider in the past.
I'm pretty sure Hunter at Pixels and Ink in Reno.
Okay.
Is it Hunter? Maybe. I know there's somebody in Reno that will actually come out and calibrate your monitor because otherwise, I mean, how much was that thing? Your Spider?
About 90.
Oh, that's it?
Yeah.
Okay. I thought there were more, but you know, it's something that you're gonna use and calibrate, but then like you really need to buy it and have it forever.
Right.
Do you have to calibrate like all the time or just
Yeah,
once?
yeah, you have to.
Oh, really?
Your monitor will lose the
Okay, never mind, just go
least
buy
mine
one.
does. At least I know mine does, and I have like, at the end of the year, I'll have like 12 profiles, so it seems
Oh, wow.
to.
You're kind of a slacker, Neil,
You know, the way I look at it is everybody's computer is gonna be different, so if I get it just perfect on mine, that doesn't mean it's gonna look good on yours, and then, you know, some people are colorblind and they're not gonna see it right, and if it's going on TV, somebody's got their hue jacked, I mean.
God forbid you give it to your mother and she prints it at Walmart.
Right?
No calibration tools are gonna say.
So I got a fun fact, do you know women show more color when they edit? The women can see and take more color than men, did you know that?
Yeah. We can tell the difference between white and eggshell.
Yeah.
We know.
I think that's why when you do like, when you get real busy as a photographer and use an editing service, and you can bring on your, most of them are ladies. Yeah.
Where did you get your Spider?
I bought mine on B&H online.
B&H, Adorama, eBay, Amazon.
Yeah.
Shit, I might just check Craigslist.
There you go.
You'd
Never
want
gonna
it,
use this again.
you'd want it new.
Other questions, anybody?
Neil, when you shoot, when you do light painting, do you have a favorite lens for that, like either fixed lens or variable?
Just depends on the subject, really. No, I wouldn't say I have a favorite. I mean, I guess what's important is that you have a sharp lens, but for light painting, I'm usually stopping down enough that any lens is almost sharp. You know, I'm typically going to be shooting f8 or f10 or just to kill a lot of the ambient. But if I was shooting at 2.8, then yeah, I would definitely consider using a prime or just something that you know is sharp, wide open, would be my only thing. Yeah. So I don't know if I answered your question. Probably not. The sharpest lens that will fit your subject. I mean, for me, that's like a 24-70 probably, or a 70 to 200, or what I typically use. I do have a 14 that's, you know, for wide stuff, but 24-70 is kind of a go-to for that kind of stuff.
Nobody else?
For the time lapse, what are your settings for the photo, or how often are you shooting?
How often?
Like, what are you setting the thing to?
The interval.
What are your intervals?
What do you give?
Interval, well, at night,
I set it at 30 seconds. So I'm normally taking a 20-second exposure, and I like 20 seconds because it limits the blur if you go any further, any longer than 20 seconds. So therefore, therefore, 2 shots a minute. Okay. Now, this dumb thing I was doing with this flower the other day, I was taking a shot every 5 minutes. So, but otherwise, like the clock, I was taking a shot every minute.
What made the flower not turn out?
Well, first off, you have to be smart enough to understand that the flower is probably going to grow up. So it might actually get out of the frame.
Got it. That would have been frustrating.
Yeah. Yeah, I forgot to mention that, so. Sometimes it's a sub, but if I do it again, I'll. Also, it was a pretty crummy flower.
Did the crayons out back?
Yeah, we did crayons melting at 120 degrees.
That was good.
Yes.
What was your other, do you know if you remember, or what do you usually set as a starting point for crayons? What do you have crayons on that?
It's just like you're gonna take a picture.
And we've been trying to get a Milky Way, or like you open it up completely.
Oh, with the Milky Way, I'll open it up completely. Yeah, the 2.8. So, and I normally use my 14 for.
I have a question on exposure settings. Say if you're doing a time lapse of a sunset or a sunrise, how do you adjust for the changing of light that's gonna happen throughout?
I'm laughing because Neil and I have gone round and round on this a lot.
I used it on ISO and it actually worked pretty good, but I didn't know.
And you know, one time I did that because I actually took the sun one down, and I did do auto, and it worked well. But now I just don't do it.
Yeah, I mean, that's called the Holy Grail for a good reason. I mean, that's a really challenging thing to do. I've actually never done it before. There are programs, and I have a piece of software. Did you end up using it, Kippy?
No, we bought 3 other different ones to try to bulb ramp properly.
Okay.
Still haven't gotten
Yeah, I
it.
mean, if you look up
It's
bulb
frustrating.
ramping on YouTube, you'll probably find a lot of people, or do Holy Grail time lapse. You'll get like how to do that. But basically, the software I have, it controls from your phone to your camera, and it basically does a ramp so that your exposure changes over time. Because as it gets darker, obviously you need a longer exposure. So, you know, what I've done, I haven't done like an entire transition, but I'll typically shoot, like if I'm doing dawn to sunrise, I will expose a little darker at the night end of it, and then bring it up in Lightroom. But I mean, it's a manual pain in the butt kind of way to go. The other thing that I've done, and these are all like workarounds, and they're not the way that anybody should do things, but if you do one, so let's say everything is underexposed, you could do one sequence underexposed, do your other sequence that's properly exposed, and then you have 2 sequences in your video editor, and then you cross dissolve between the 2 so that you don't have to basically bulb ramp manually in Lightroom, or I probably didn't explain that right at all, but yeah.
So you're taking a section of these images and then a section of these images and putting those together?
Yeah, because what ends up happening is if you expose for the nighttime side of it, then as soon as the sun comes up, it's blown out. So if you expose for the sunny part of it, and I try and find the happy medium where I can recover. Like if it's only blown out by maybe a stop, I can usually just bring the exposure down in Camera Raw or Lightroom and not lose anything. If I can find the happy medium, then I'll do one clip for when it's bright and one clip for when it's dark, and then basically dissolve from one clip to the next.
so that it appears, you're basically double processing the same file, kind of like what Kippy did, where she processed it for the highlights and she processed it for the lowlights, and then she blended the two together. I'm kind of doing that with video. It's a really stupid way to do it, probably.
Actually, that's clever. I never even thought to do it that way.
Yeah, it's kind of cheating.
It's a lot easier than trying to figure out how to get a bulb ramp to work.
Yeah, I mean, the one I have is called Trigger Trap, and it's an app for your smartphone, and it has a cable that goes right to it, and it has a bulb ramping feature in it. I think there's another one called Arsenal, maybe, that does it. There's a bunch of them, and Kippy's got like 4 of them.
Yeah. I can sell you all of them.
I've actually never bothered to learn it just because, I don't know, I'm lazy.
I have spent several frustrating evenings trying to get the sunset in the valley, and the thing is, the fastest they'll shoot is something like 1/60th of a second. You cannot shoot any faster with any of these programs. I don't know what it is in it, but or not 1/60th, 1/20th of a second is the fastest you can shoot. So, I mean, that limits so much.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. I don't know how anybody can do it.
Huh.
I don't know. I can't do it, so I'm probably just bitter.
I wanted to say, and what about the meter? I know with the Nikon, if you like properly use the meter of the camera.
Like you could do an auto, like you're saying use the camera's meter for every shot?
Yeah, kind of use like a mid-range.
Yeah, you could. You said you used auto and it worked, okay?
Auto ISO.
Auto ISO.
Oh, auto ISO? Are you talking about auto ISO or auto exposure
I'm
or?
talking about the meter on the camera because I don't know if I'll shoot with the Nikon. So like, the meter is the point where the sensor is going to focus to expose the image.
Right, so typically I meter once and then it's just in manual, and so it's not re-metering every shot. If I were to shoot my time lapse in full auto where the camera metered the light every shot, that could work, but if something happens where the frame brightens, or let's say a cloud comes in, or something where the meter's gonna change, then your video could be flickery, is the problem that I've heard of. Everybody says, no, just shoot in manual, that way but I haven't tried it in auto. You might try it and see if it works, because yeah, that's the best way, then every shot is exposed properly. But if there's small inconsistencies from shot to shot, I think your video is gonna be like a sputtery mess.
And I did that once, and you're right, it's a sputtering mess.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, when I make reference, I think the meter, like center point or.
Oh, okay.
That's like a setting on the camera specifically to, let's say, if you want the camera to expose more around.
Right.
The center of the sensor, or more in the middle, so that's how maybe you set it up that you can have the sensor focus on both, like let's say on the sky and on the closer subject, you will be able to kind of like.
Yeah, I never even. I've never actually changed that. I always just leave it on center weighted. And that's the mode I've always used. So maybe using a different mode, it would look at each frame and average it differently, and you wouldn't have that problem with the flicker.
But now I'm gonna try it.
That's
I'll let you know,
certainly something to try. It's a good idea.
Any other holes to poke and?
Raw nerves to touch on.
Right, exactly. Want to point out any of our other shortcomings?
Hey, do we have any Wolfpack fans in the room?
Oh, Neil.
Oh, Lee.
Oh.
North Carolina State.
How many Rebel
Sorry,
fans?
I went there.
All right, any other questions at this point about anything processing related? I think we can take a break.
3 points, we should have won that game.
No. Okay, Kippy, can I try to get rid of these?
Yes, absolutely.
So, I've got a whole bunch of Gold View posters
They're right over here.
that you can give away to kids or something. And they're right over there. Also Gold View. And a thing about BioCrust. So, right there. Please take them, so I don't have to take them. But I won't leave them to you.
Thank you. So, I think we have about half an hour before we're gonna start our next presentation. That'll give Neil a lot of time to get his magic set up here. So feel free to take a quick walk through the museum or just sit around and chat or whatever. Stretch your legs, wake up, post lunch.